Today on Locked On Canadiens, is there a scenario where Patrik Laine returns to Montreal after his contract is over? We talk about the latest rumblings we've heard about the Lane Hutson contract extension. And finally, we discuss some August narratives that we would like to be over.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian, who I poached from the Build podcast. Ian, are you ready for your one episode this week?
Yeah. I mean, we get to start with talking about my dude, Patrik Laine. So, yeah, pretty excited. When you pitched this episode, I was like, this sounds like an episode I would have come up with. So,
yes. I do have to be honest. It is a listener. It is our listener Vincent that gave us this idea. But I was not going to do a Patty Laine question on the mailbag without you, so I moved it into a segment for Monday.
No Patrik Laine gets talked about unless I say it goes, unless I'm in on it.
So the question was essentially, what could a deal with Patrik Laine, what kind of deal could they make with Patrik Laine that would make us feel good, right? So I wanted to kind of expand a little bit on that. What does Patrik Laine have to do this year to stay in the Montreal Canadiens conversation for their future? And then what kind of money and term are we okay with for Patrik Laine going forward, assuming that things go well this year? So I guess let's start with the first question.
Yeah, I think what he needs to do this season is, at least to me, pretty clear. And it's be more of a player at 5-on-5. We know the power play goals were there this year, and there might be some of that next year. We don't know. We're all theorizing that they're going to go with the game 3 power play where it was just the future, where it was all of the players that were on the ice were less than 24 or 24 or under. And it was just, this is just what it's going to be like for the next 10 years. They might go with that, but they might roll Laine out there on power play 1 again. Maybe they mix and match. Maybe maybe the power play 1 unit rotates from time to time. But the one thing that Laine can absolutely control, regardless of his deployment on power play 1, is his 5-on-5 play. And he joked about it that, he's like, maybe this year I'll score more than 3 5-on-5 goals. Because I mean, it'd be really hard for him to not do that. But I think that's what controls his destiny in Montreal, in my opinion, is his ability to contribute more offensively at 5-on-5, where he's going to play most of his time. How do you see that? Like, do you see his power play 1 time as being over? Is it really that important for him to be that active at 5-on-5?
I think, yes, it is important. I don't think his time on power play 1 is over. I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to mix and match a little bit. I do feel that they might pump the brakes on that game 3 power play unit just in case, right? I think, and a lot of people are kind of like already naysaying and Doom's, I don't know, is it Doom's predicting, whatever it is, about the number
scrolling, but for talking.
Doom scrolling, but for talking. Doom scrolling, but in the comments. About, Marty not playing Ivan Demidov enough and things like that. But I think we have to kind of look at Patrik Laine independent of Ivan Demidov. Their fates are very intertwined for a lot of reasons. The power play being one, the fact that they might the potential for them both to play on the second line. Another one, I do think that 5v5 play is really important. But second, I think what's really important is when the Canadiens first traded for Patrik Laine, we had on David Saint-Louis. And he explained to us what makes Patrik Laine so special, which is something that, objectively he was not able to do coming back from his injuries. And I think, what his ability to drive play is underrated. I think we look at him as a goal scorer, and there's something about, and I really did not truly fully understand and grasp it until David came on, and we looked at his work on EP Ringside. Which everybody should be reading. And really just the fact that he's able to drive play a lot. He's able to create. And so I think what I want to see is I want that to come into play. I want him to be able to do that effectively. For me, that's including 5v5. It's not just the point totals or the goals, it's what he's actually doing. Is he making the players around him better? Is he making the players around him achieve their potential, right? So that's something that I'm watching out for this upcoming season. He seems to have the desire to do it. It's really funny because the other day I was scrolling Instagram and I saw that Noah Dobson and his new wife are saying goodbye to PEI and coming to Montreal in the coming days. And I was like, all right, now we're going to see another guy on the ice, right? It's not September yet. And so, these guys are happy. They're excited. He's excited. Like, I want to see this energy and motivation in December. And I want to see this energy and motivation from every guy. But I think from Patrik Laine, it's crucial because there are some questions sometimes about his desire. And I think they're unfounded, but I think this is a good way to shut people up.
Yeah, for sure. I very much agree with your take on sort of his role in the transition play, right? Because David St. Louis, we asked him, because I remember reading his article on Patrik Laine and thinking, that his ability to play well in transition doesn't really mesh with our thoughts of what this player is, just a lethal shooter. And, David St. Louis pointed out, like, he can do both. And at times it felt like between him and his line mates in Columbus, it was difficult for him to pick and choose when he was supposed to do that. I think now in Montreal on that second line, assuming he's on that second line and assuming Ivan Demidov is opposite him on that line, you're looking at an opportunity where they can take turns driving the play and getting open. If Laine could just get open at 5-on-5, I feel pretty confident that Demidov's going to find him. Like, that to me would be enough to give Laine that sort of edge at 5-on-5, and it comes off of transition with playing with Demidov. So we'll see how all that goes. You want to get into the nuts of the contract here? Like, let's try to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know, we said reasonable, but reasonable in today's NHL, it could be a guy that currently makes 8 something wanting 12. And I don't think that that's happening in Montreal.
No, I don't either. I'm trying to find their salary cap for next year. So for the 26-27 season, the salary cap limit will be at $104 million. The Canadiens are projected right now to have $37 million in cap space. Now, we know that while the Lane Hutson contract isn't over yet, that's when an extension would be kicking in. You have to think about an extension for an Ivan Demidov would be then the following year. You'd have to start considering those things in making these deals. For me, what I think feels right is 7 million by 5, 7 million by 4, somewhere. And I know people are going to go 7 million. That's a lot. Yes, we have to stop thinking of things in a flat cap world, though, because in 3 years, when he's towards the end of that deal, $7 million then is going to look like $4 million now.
Yeah.
So we need to get out of that flat cap thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think 7 by 4. If Laine is like, I want to play here, let's make this work. You can, make it bonus laden as much as you're going to be able to under the new CBA. But I feel like that's a good, for me anyway, a good fit. Am I high on my own supply here, Laura? Like, how close is that?
I felt the 5 years as well. I didn't know if the Canadiens were going to get away with going with 7. And so I was saying like a high 7 or a low 8. Just because he's like 29 years old, this man, right? Like, this is his big last thing before he's like, he starts signing for a couple years just to keep going, just to keep playing, right? Yeah. And that gives the Canadiens a lot of flexibility for the future, because at some point they're going to run into the same problem that every team that's trying to contend runs into, is that they're going to have to start shedding some players, and some players that were key in their run, right? So like Patrik Laine at 4 to 5 years, if they can get it, would be incredible, because 5 years from now they can part ways, hopefully with something under his belt, right? And again, we're not saying the words, because I know my co-host doesn't believe in jinxes. I do. So, like, that's the kind of thing that I'm looking at. Like, he's the kind of player that's going to come off, the core.
Yeah.
And I think it's perfectly fine to have people that are your core for good for your entire contending window, and people to be part of your core until the next person steps up. And this
Yeah.
gives a lot of people who are potentially not even drafted yet a lot of time to
Yeah.
to take that up, right? Because I do think that he is special. I do think that he's an incredible talent, but I think that we'd be more comfortable with him leaving than a Slavkovsky leaving 5 years from now.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll leave on is I'm less convinced that teams are going to get into that shedding, we have to get rid of stuff mentality with the cap exploding the way that it is. Yes, like the Blackhawks and the Lightning and the Kings, all of those teams that got successful and were managing the cap very efficiently, the light came on at the bar and the tab came due eventually for all of them because the cap wasn't going anywhere. Now we know that it is. I'm very curious to see how that sort of dynamic changes. Are teams still going to encounter that issue, or is it more likely that they are able to better manage the cap with just always having more space? We'll see how it works out.
Absolutely. In the meantime, there are some more noises and rumblings about Lane Hutson and the contract talks, and we're going to get into that right up next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than the energy of tailgates and being in the stands with your fellow fans. The only downside, trying to get tickets. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices that jump at checkout. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. And the app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. And I love zone deals too. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go. Download Game Time today. All right. So we have been kind of quiet on the Lane Hutson potential contract extension because we felt that there was probably not a lot of movement or traction on it in the last few weeks. However, there has been some news. Ian.
Yeah, let's get into it. So Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, big Elite Prospects episode where we're hitting him up all over the place. He posted on X, Twitter. For those waiting on a Lane Hutson extension, don't expect anything to really get going until his camp sees what Luke Hughes signs for. Even then, both sides have viable reasons for waiting until next offseason. So this to me reads that they don't know. Both parties are kind of confused as to what to do here because I think a lot of people have argued, myself included, that like there's no incentive for Lane Hutson to sign right now. There's just none. He would be setting the market for somebody else in his class when instead he could be waiting for somebody else to set the market and then going, I'm better than that guy. So this makes a lot of sense. It also makes a lot of sense for Hutson to just wait till next summer because he'll have another season under his belt. He probably feels pretty confident that he can repeat what he did, if not improve upon it. So, like, it has always made more sense for me for them to figure this out next summer. However, the Luke Hughes comp is interesting. I don't know that. I think it's one that the Hutson camp is probably looking at because it would be tough for the Canadiens to say you're not better than Luke Hughes. Because, I mean, yes, it's a smaller sample size, but I firmly believe that Hutson is better than Luke Hughes at this moment. It's not to say that he will always be better than him, but Hutson's rookie season was head and shoulders above anything we've seen Luke Hughes do so far. That's just the long and short of it.
It's very smart by Lane Hutson's camp.
1,000%. It's like, when Caulfield was going through his sort of contract thoughts, and the name that kept getting thrown around was Matt Boldy. Like that was his comp. this is Hutson's in a way. They're not the same player, but it's a young puck moving offensive defenseman who's looking to hit his first big contract as the cap is going up. You know, if I think what does Lou Lamoriello always say? If you have time, use it.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing here. They have time. They don't need to rush into this. Hutson seems committed to being in Montreal. They would just rather somebody else set the market so they can go, okay, that's a decent number, but I think I'm a little bit better than that.
Yeah. And I think also like one thing that you do also have to remember is what does this player do for his team, right? And for Lane Hutson, like I think that he brings more value to his team because there's nobody on the team that can even remotely complement it, right? We talked about Noah Dobson being really incredible. He is, but he's not Lane Hutson, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there aren't a lot of players like Lane Hutson in this league. There aren't. Like, it's, you know, at his size profile, it's like him and Adam Fox and Shane Gostisbehere and end of list. Like, there's not a lot
of better than those guys.
Yeah, I couldn't have imagined the fall off that Adam Fox has had. Like, that's been tough to watch because he was unbelievable. And just the last few years has just been not non-existent, but if the Rangers want to be better than they are, he needs to be a part of it. Lane Hutson has surpassed him already, which is why it's funny, like, to look at Team USA and like you can pick one of these two players. They are of the same archetype. I mean, I guess you go with Fox because he's the veteran, but I think that's a lot closer than you know, maybe Team USA would care to admit.
Yeah, I think so too. And speaking of that Team USA thing, we didn't discuss this last week, but Lane Hutson just didn't really, it didn't really bother him. He said it did bother him. He said it stings, but it just made him even more determined. And I think something about what he said just makes me feel like he's going to be so good for the Montreal Canadiens this season.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope that if Team USA loses in the Olympics, he sends out a Phil Kessel tweet. It's like, I feel like there's something I should have been doing tonight. Oh, well, I can't put my finger on it. Like, that would be bangers, just bangers from Lane Hutson. Let's start to ask this question now. Let's start to have this conversation because I feel like I know my answer. I feel like I might know your answer. Are you worried about where this contract is going?
No, because if it's going to be $12 million a year, I think he's going to make it worth it. So yes, I know, like we talked about this year, like, oh my God, if there's anything under 10, the Canadiens should just sign that right away and just like not look back. I think it's perfectly reasonable for him to get something like 11.96 a year or some weird number that people are always, you know, like people are always signing for like that weird denomination.
11.48. Put his number in the
there you
dollar
go.
amount. He did it.
Yeah, but if it's $12 million, he's gonna be worth it. Like this kid, like especially like if he's able to put his money where his mouth is when it comes to Team USA, I have no qualms about giving him $12 million a year. It's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be tight for the future, but I think he's going to be worth it. He's going to prove himself to be worth it. There has been nothing in his career so far that hasn't shut people up.
Yeah. And I have a hard, again, and this goes back to the thought I closed out the first segment on. I have a really hard time thinking that the Canadiens are going to end up in a tough cap situation, just given what we've seen. You know, all of the parts of their core that are currently locked up long-term, all of them are under incredibly reasonable contracts, if not bargains. Like Suzuki at less than 8 is a bargain. You know, and their next contracts are likely not going to be bargains, but the cap is going up. We can only imagine what the cap is going to look like in 6 years from now, 5 or 6 years from now. So I'm not all that worried about them running out of space. And if they're building the culture that, like, yes, I know the Florida Panthers they get to play with palm trees in Florida and it's nice and they don't have taxes. If you can build that in Montreal still, people will want to come and play here. Because if you win, you will be gods. It's not a difficult concept.
Nobody's going to care. Like, it's the same thing. Like, people always talk about, like, Florida, oh, everyone wants. No, because even when it was tax-free and the palm trees were still there, when the Panthers sucked, nobody wanted to go.
Yeah.
Like, that was the last resort contract people would do when they couldn't get that money from anywhere else.
Yeah,
right?
the Stephen Weiss era,
Yes.
Olli Jokinen era, sick. Like, no, nobody was there, man.
Like literally. So like if Montreal is able to build a culture where people can be like, that's a place I can play for the cup, then everybody's going to want to sign here. Nobody's going to care about the taxes, the cold, the French schools, or whatever it is that everyone's always making an excuse, right? I live in Montreal. It's a pretty great place to live, even though it's cold most of the time, right? So just imagine, like, if I had millions, like, it would be an incredible life, right? So all these players are going to come here with millions. So nobody's going to say no if Montreal is a place that you can win a cup, right?
Yep.
Like right now, the conversations we have about like Sidney Crosby, which I know, again, pipe dream all the time. We talk about Sydney. We only mentioned two places. We mentioned Montreal because like sentimental value, and we mentioned Colorado because like he can play for a cup there, right? Nobody's saying that like Sidney Crosby is dying to sign in like LA or whatever.
Ooh, yeah, that
Nothing
seems like
that.
very Sidney Crosby to play in Los Angeles.
Right?
Not even a little. If you see Sidney Crosby signing in Los Angeles, that's an android. That's a robot. That's a Terminator. Like, that's not him.
It's a deep fake.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to get into, speaking of some of these August narratives, including pipe dreams about Sidney Crosby coming here. Let's talk about August narratives that we would like to not see again as we get closer and closer to the regular season. And that's coming up in just a moment. All right, listeners, we have an important request for you. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you for helping us out. All right, Ian, we wanted to do this last week. And we had lots of topics and we had an incredible selection of mailbag questions, which please, listeners, I'll be on my own for the mailbag this week as well. So please send all your amazing questions for the mailbag on Friday. Send them by Thursday. We want to talk about August narratives that we never want to see again.
Yeah, August narratives and just generally summer content. I know I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth here because that's what we do here. We work hard to bring a show to you during the summer that is different than what you're seeing elsewhere. Sometimes we hit the mark, sometimes we don't. When we don't, we certainly hear about it. But I find that I don't know if it's because of the advent of generative AI or what have you, but I feel that summer content in the National Hockey League has gotten so lazy. I feel like we're just at a point where it's just, we need 700 words on this 3-word tweet. Go. And it's a lot of nothing. The one thing that kickstarted this conversation for me, and I talked about it last week, we need to stop looking at these 3-on-3 leagues that take place in the summer and extrapolating actual hockey analysis out of it. It's just guys being dudes. Like, we don't have to put any extra oomph. The thing I bring that up about is that Demidov and Evans played a couple shifts together at one of these 3-on-3 games, and they made a pretty sweet play. And I saw people saying that Evans should be the second line center, and I nearly fell out of my chair. Like, holy sample size. Like, it's not. And I know, I'm going to stop ranting about this in a second, but I know I am pert near alone on the idea that 3-on-3 hockey stinks and that it's just not good. If you're playing a 3-on-3 tournament and that's the whole thing, fine, but it's certainly not NHL hockey, especially on these little tiny rinks where there's 3 of them skating around. I find
it's fun. It's supposed to be. Yes. It's there for fun. It's a money grab. It's there for fun.
Yeah. It's
entertainment.
It's like sending a food critic to an ice cream truck. Like, that's not what we should be doing with this. Like, that doesn't move the needle for me. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be fun. Like, they have like little, they have every ice cream you can imagine, but it's I'm not expecting a Michelin star. So I know I just ranted a whole bunch about this. It's been in my system for a few days now, and since I'm leaving and for a few days and don't have to deal with people yelling at me about my takes on 3-on-3. I feel safe. This was my safe space to get that off of my
We're gonna
chest.
yell
So
at
thank
me
you.
for your 3-3 other
Yeah.
takes.
Exactly.
So I have one, and this one is not. It's not as prevalent, but I mean, we all do it, right? Like any NHL player or their spouse or anything tangentially related that has like a public social media account, and I'm talking particularly on Instagram, like people like, and even the NHL will kind of like curate what people are doing over their off season, and then they'll like post like, oh, off season check-ins and stuff like that. And every once in a while you get something like people talking about like, why are these people on vacation when they should be training and things like that. And
Ugh.
I feel like I don't think people maybe understand the extent to which the NHL or playing for the NHL controls your life over the course of a season. Like there are players that like often have to like get a special exception to like skip a game because their child is being born, right? That's not like everyday people don't have that. Like everyday people can like go and witness their child's birth, can like be
Yeah.
present for their child's birth, right? So like, or like they have like they schedule C-sections because so that it's not on a game day. Like that's not unheard of, right? So like we have a lot of like they like I think we don't have a handle on like how much this controls your life, right? And then at the end of the season, whether it ends in April or it ends in June, at the end of the season there's like exit interviews or meetings or whatever where they give you the homework you're supposed to do, which is sometimes work on your conditioning, work on your face-offs, recover from injury, right? If you get injured and all of a sudden you're out for the season and you're not scheduled to be better until like September, like there goes your entire summer too. So like these people having fun going on multiple trips because they can afford to, and going to Italy or whatever, going to each other's weddings. Like I think we got to calm down. Like I'm sure they're working out. Like
Yeah.
if they show up to the preseason and they're out of shape, they will hear about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think that some people should have an app on their phone where if you try to write anything to an athlete or their spouse on any kind of social media, it bricks your phone. I just think there are some people that cannot handle it. Most people that are doing that, I've never even thought to write anything to one of these people. These guys put their bodies on the line all year. They it's an incredibly, I guess they get to play a game for a living and that's fun, but like the travel is nuts, the strain on their body's nuts. They earn all of these vacations, so get off their back. Like I find that
yes.
to just be so dumb.
And it
And
usually happens to underperforming players. Like if you had a bad season, you're going to hear about it, right?
yeah,
It's less like nobody's going on Nick Suzuki's, or to my knowledge, nobody's going on Nick Suzuki's Instagram and saying things like this.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like these are things where like we gotta like we're privileged enough for them to allow us a glimpse into their off ice lives. Like we gotta handle that responsibility more carefully.
Yeah, the only one in Nick Suzuki's mentions is Doug Armstrong, and he's going, "You can see the world, but you won't go to worlds." That's crazy. Anyway, I I have one more, and I like this is the kind of content that spawned Rumor Roundup, the just sort of poking fun at the idea that some of these rumors are just nonsense. The rumor articles, it's not all of them, but specifically the ones that always read something like this: Habs exploring market on $39 million defenseman. And it's just them talking about Mike Matheson. Like that, there's a trend where we throw the total dollar amount of a contract into the title. So it's like, wow, $70 million player. And it's like, I don't know, just a guy. We're like a couple posts away from them using career earnings to talk about this sort of thing instead of just like the total number on a cap hit, which are on a contract, which I think is already crazy enough. These are the parts of the summer I cannot stand because we're so far from actual hockey going. We're so far from the last game being played, and we're just in this dead zone where nothing's happening and we're all left to our devices. And these people still have jobs to do. People have websites to run. They need
we
your
do
clicks.
too, right? We have to
Sure.
like dig for content every single day.
Sure, but I like we also have to talk for a half hour 3 days a week, and then soon it'll be 5 days a week again. Like we can't really go through the motions. You would notice.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we are we're just in that point where these are like all of what's happening.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll get out of this, but it is something that completely drives me nuts. And it's why Rumor Roundup exists, is to be like, this is silly. We need to point out how silly this is.
Yes, and we will continue to do that every time there's a silly rumor. But I do love the way that's phrased. Habs exploring the market on a $39 million defenseman. It makes you look like the Canadiens are like going out to look for someone and not just like sending in the group chat, anyone want Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. I wish you would stop the ride. I want to get off.
Yes, it is time for trivia, so that we can, well, you can get out of here and I'll be back for 2 more episodes this week.
Yeah. Last episode's question. Which Canadiens defenseman has the most even strength goals in a single season with 17? Do you remember the answer to this one, Laura?
I do not remember the answer to this one, even though you told me it.
It was Georges Mantha.
Oh, wow.
17 goals in 1937-38. So quite a long time ago. There were a bunch of players with 16, but Mantha was alone in first with 17. Super Rain and Jeff Harpel had your answers there. Today's question, if you'll allow me, is less of Canadiens trivia and more of Ian trivia. This is
hockey trivia. It is hockey
trivia in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a ticket stub that's been on my desk since, I guess, Friday, December 27th, 2019. I'll show it on camera. It is a ticket to Madison Square Garden, New York Rangers versus the Carolina Hurricanes. Something very significant happened during this game. What was the significant outcome of this hockey game between the Rangers and the Hurricanes that I got to go to? If you know the answer, put it in the comments down below. Send it to us any way you know how, and we'll shout you out on the next episode of the show.
You heard the man, and you can send us your answers as well as your mailbag questions by leaving them in the YouTube comments. You can also email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. And on social media, we are posting on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Blue Sky as Locked On Canadiens. That's where you can send your trivia questions. That's where, you can trivia your trivia answers and your mailbag questions. Do not forget that I'm alone for the mailbag this week, so please send me lots of juicy questions like the ones you did last week. In the meantime, please make sure you are subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. As you know, we're free and available every single day. So please keep up with the content, especially as we get closer and closer to the Montreal Canadiens coming back and reporting to camp. You can find my co-hosts all over social media at Baby It's Ian. You can find me at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all on Wednesday.